they died on an alien world, and then they came back. But each resurrection changed them. The commander must choose: save the crew or escape alone. What price will they pay for survival? Subscribe now to uncover the chilling truth. The impact threw Commander Elena Voss against the bulkhead as warning alarms screamed through the ship's corridors. The Prometheus had been their home for 3 years during this deep space exploration mission, but now it lay crippled on an uncharted planet. Through the cracked viewport, she watched as swirling violet clouds parted to reveal towering crystalline structures jutting from the surface, like jagged teeth. Her last conscious thought before darkness claimed her was wondering if anyone would ever find them here, light years from known space lanes. When she awoke hours later, the ship's AI informed her that 3 crew members were dead, their life signs terminated during the crash sequence. But as she prepared to organize recovery operations, something impossible happened. Private Daniels, whose body had been recovered from the engineering deck, suddenly drew breath again. Daniels' return was not immediate. It took hours. At first, his vital signs remained flat, his body cold and lifeless. Yet, as the medical team prepared to move him to the morgue, his fingers twitched. Then came a gasp, followed by rasping breaths that grew steadier. The medical bay lights flickered erratically as Dr. Chen ran scans over Daniel's prone form. His vital signs read normal, almost too perfect, yet there was something subtly wrong about his restored body. Tiny crystal-like formations shimmered beneath his skin, catching the light in ways human tissue never should. "It's unprecedented," Chen muttered, adjusting his glasses despite the digital overlay in his visor. Cellular regeneration at this level, the energy requirements alone. He trailed off as Daniels opened his eyes, revealing pupils that contracted into geometric patterns rather than normal circles. Outside, the alien forest stretched infinitely, its phosphorescent foliage pulsing with an inner light that seemed to synchronize with Daniel's breathing. As evening fell, more crew members began experiencing strange symptoms, vivid hallucinations of fractal patterns, acute sensitivity to the planet's electromagnetic field, and an inexplicable craving to touch the glowing vegetation. The crash site itself was surrounded by these luminescent plants, their tendrils creeping closer to the damaged hull of the Prometheus. It was as though the planet itself was alive, reaching out to claim them. Commander Voss gathered what remained of her leadership team in the command module. The air was thick with tension as they discussed their options. Supplies were limited, repairs extensive, and morale at an all-time low. Worse still, the mystery of Daniel's resurrection loomed over every decision. Was it a miracle or a curse? And why did the planet seem so aware? Every step outside the ship revealed new anomalies: rocks that hummed when touched, streams of liquid that defied gravity, and trees whose branches shifted position when no one was looking. This was no ordinary world. It was a place where the boundaries between life and death, organic and synthetic, reality and illusion, blurred into something incomprehensible. 3 days after the crash, another death occurred when Lieutenant Marks fell through a weakened section of the hull during repairs. His body was retrieved from the acidic rain outside, and within hours, he too returned to life. This time, the changes were more pronounced. His fingers had elongated slightly, ending in crystalline tips that emitted soft pulses of light. The resurrected crew members gathered near the ship's airlock, drawn by some unseen force toward the alien forest. Commander Voss ordered double shifts on repair work, desperate to get the Prometheus spaceworthy before more of her people succumbed to whatever transformation the planet demanded. But progress slowed as equipment malfunctioned inexplicably, tools warping in the hands of those who had already returned from death. During sleep cycles, she caught glimpses of shadowy figures moving through the corridors, their forms distorted by faint prismatic halos. Mark's transformation was particularly unsettling. His voice carried an eerie harmonic quality, as if multiple tones spoke simultaneously. When questioned, he claimed to feel more connected, though he struggled to articulate what that meant. "It's like, I can hear things," he said, pressing his crystalline fingertips to his temples. "Not voices exactly. Patterns. Everything has a rhythm." His words sent chills down the spines of those who listened. Meanwhile, Daniels had begun exhibiting similar traits, his movements fluid and precise, almost mechanical. Together, they spent hours staring out at the forest, their bodies swaying in sync with the pulsating glow of the alien flora. The science team worked tirelessly to understand the phenomenon. Dr. Patel hypothesized that the planet's ecosystem operated on principles of quantum entanglement, allowing it to manipulate matter at a fundamental level. If we're dealing with a form of intelligent nanotechnology, she explained during a briefing, then the transformations could be intentional. This isn't random mutation, it's design. Her theory gained traction when analysis of tissue samples revealed microscopic spores embedded in the resurrected crew member cells. These spores weren't inert. They actively restructured DNA, rewriting biological functions while preserving core memories and skills. As the days passed, the divide between the transformed and the unaltered grew wider. Those who had returned from death seemed to exist in a state of perpetual euphoria, their pain receptors dulled, their senses heightened. They spoke of visions, vast networks of consciousness stretching across the planet, linking every living thing. To them, the concept of individuality felt increasingly irrelevant. We're all part of something greater, Marx whispered one night, his crystalline fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. Why fight it? But for Commander Voss and the others, the prospect of losing their humanity was unthinkable. They clung to routines, to familiar protocols, anything to anchor themselves in reality. Yet even the most mundane tasks became surreal. Food tasted different, colors appeared sharper, and time itself seemed to stretch and compress unpredictably. It was as though the planet's influence permeated everything, reshaping not just bodies but perceptions. Week 4 brought tragedy, when Chief Engineer Romero sacrificed himself to seal a critical hull breach. His return was different, more complete, more alien. His skin had transformed into a lattice of living crystal, capable of manipulating electromagnetic fields around him. He demonstrated this new ability by disabling half the ship's systems with a casual gesture. The remaining human crew retreated to the command module, sealing bulkheads against their former comrades. Through observation ports, they watched as the transformed crew members merged with the forest, their bodies dissolving into streams of light that flowed into the largest crystalline structure visible from orbit. The entity, for that's what it clearly was, communicated through these structures, broadcasting visions of infinite possibilities where death no longer existed, but at the cost of individual consciousness. Commander Voss faced her darkest hour yet, abandon ship while she still could, or risk everything to understand this phenomenon. Romero's transformation marked a turning point. Unlike Daniels and Marx, who retained fragments of their original personalities, Romero seemed entirely consumed by the entity. His speech consisted of cascading harmonics, his movements flowing like water. He no longer acknowledged his former crewmates, instead focusing intently on the crystalline monolith that dominated the horizon. "He's gone," muttered Ensign Carter, tears streaming down her face as she watched him vanish into the forest. Whatever's left of him, it's not human anymore. The entity's presence grew stronger with each passing day. Its influence extended beyond the transformed crew, affecting the very fabric of reality aboard the Prometheus. Equipment malfunctioned in bizarre ways. Monitors displayed fractal patterns instead of data. Gravity fluctuated unpredictably, and artificial lighting dimmed to useless levels. Even attempts to communicate via radio resulted in garbled transmissions filled with static and haunting melodies. It was as though the ship itself resisted their efforts to leave, forcing them to confront the truth. They were guests here, whether they liked it or not. Voss convened an emergency meeting with her senior staff. "We need to decide," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "Do we focus on repairing the ship and escaping, or do we try to understand what's happening here?" Opinions were divided. Some argued that survival depended on leaving immediately, while others believed studying the phenomenon could unlock revolutionary technologies. Dr. Patel suggested a compromise: gather as much data as possible while continuing repair efforts. "If we can document this," she reasoned, We might find a way to control it, or at least warn others. Yet doubts lingered. Could they truly trust the entity's intentions? Its promises of immortality sounded seductive, but history taught that such gifts often came at a terrible price. And what of free will? If integration meant surrendering individuality, was it worth the cost? As the debate raged, Voss couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated, their choices carefully orchestrated by forces far beyond their comprehension. Attempting communication directly proved both fascinating and terrifying. Using modified translation algorithms based on Carter's neural patterns, they established limited dialogue with the collective consciousness. It viewed their mortal condition as inefficient, akin to viewing single-celled organisms through a microscope. Concepts like individuality held little meaning. Instead, it valued integration and shared experience. When asked about the changes occurring in resurrected humans, it described a process of harmonization, shedding inefficient biological limitations while retaining core identity patterns. The distinction between preservation and destruction blurred alarmingly. Some crew members embraced this perspective, volunteering for transformation despite the risks. Others clung desperately to their humanity, modifying their quarters to block any potential contamination. Commander Voss found herself trapped between these opposing viewpoints, each arguing their case with increasing urgency. Carter became the primary conduit for communication, her role evolving into something akin to ambassador. She spent hours meditating in front of the crystalline monolith, her mind opening to the vast network of consciousness that spanned the planet. Through her, the entity revealed glimpses of its history, a civilization that had transcended mortality by merging with their environment, creating a collective existence free from decay. Yet Carter's reports grew increasingly disjointed, suggesting this transcendence came at the cost of personal identity. "I see everyone," she murmured one night, her eyes unfocused. "All of them. Their memories, their thoughts, it's overwhelming." Meanwhile, maintenance logs painted a grim picture. Essential systems degraded faster than predicted, as if the ship itself resisted their attempts to leave. Power conduits calcified overnight. Computer cores developed crystalline growths that corrupted data storage. Even food rations tasted subtly wrong, as though infused with traces of the planet's influence. Those who still appeared human began exhibiting minor physical changes, irises developing fractal patterns, fingertips occasionally sparking with static electricity. Voss instituted strict protocols: no unnecessary contact with the exterior, mandatory decontamination procedures, rotation schedules designed to minimize exposure. But the entity proved patient, manifesting through unexpected vectors, dreams filled with geometric perfection, whispers heard in maintenance tunnels, tools rearranging themselves into impossible shapes when left unattended. Each transformed crew member retained fragments of their original personality, making their gradual loss all the more painful to witness. Time dilation affects complicated matters further. Days passed differently inside the ship compared to the surrounding environment. Crew members reported emerging from 8-hour sleep cycles to find 24 hours had elapsed elsewhere. Equipment clocks drifted out of sync, making coordinated repairs nearly impossible. The transformed crew exploited these temporal anomalies, appearing in multiple locations simultaneously or vanishing entirely for extended periods. Their understanding of local physics far exceeded human capabilities, allowing them to manipulate matter-energy relationships in ways reminiscent of theoretical technology centuries beyond current development. Yet each demonstration came with subtle warnings. Portions of the forest would darken when approached too closely. Certain crystalline formations emitted distress signals across unknown frequencies. It became clear that while the entity offered immortality, it also maintained boundaries not meant to be crossed. Commander Voss found herself walking the narrow line between pragmatism and despair. Each decision she made carried the weight of lives that were no longer purely human, but not yet fully part of the entity either. She spent sleepless nights in her quarters, staring at the glowing fractures in the walls where crystalline growths had begun to creep inward. The Prometheus was dying, not from the crash damage alone, but from something far more insidious. The ship's systems were failing in ways that defied logic, as if the very essence of the planet was rejecting their presence here. During one particularly tense meeting, Lieutenant Harper, the second in command, slammed his fist on the table. "We can't keep going like this," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cramped command module. "Every day we stay is another day closer to losing ourselves completely. Look at Carter. She's barely recognizable anymore. And Romero? He's practically a statue now." His outburst drew murmurs of agreement from some of the crew, while others stared at him with cold, calculating eyes, the kind that belonged to those who had already embraced the transformation. Voss raised a hand for silence, her expression unreadable. "I understand your frustration," she said evenly, though her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the table. "But running isn't an option unless we're prepared to abandon everyone who's changed. If we leave now, what happens to them? Do we just write them off as casualties?" Her question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. The truth was, no one knew what would happen to the transformed crew if they left. Would they remain here, forever trapped in this liminal state between life and integration? Or would the entity force its will upon them entirely, erasing whatever fragments of humanity still lingered? The debate raged on, splitting the crew into factions. Some argued that repairing the ship should take priority, even if it meant sacrificing those who had been altered. Others believed that understanding the entity was key to finding a solution that could save everyone, or at least give them a choice. Voss listened to both sides, weighing their arguments against the growing chaos around them. Supplies dwindled faster than expected, corrupted by the same mysterious forces affecting the ship's systems. Food tasted metallic, water carried a faint phosphorescent glow, and the air itself seemed thick with static electricity. It was becoming clear that the longer they stayed, the harder it would be to leave. In private, Voss confided in Dr. Chen, whose scientific mind offered a rare beacon of rationality amidst the madness. "There has to be a middle ground," she said, pacing the length of the medical bay. "Something we're missing. We can't just run, but we can't let this thing take us over either." Chen nodded thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on a monitor displaying fractal patterns generated by tissue samples taken from marks. "What if it's not about fighting it or surrendering?" he suggested. "What if we try to negotiate?" "Negotiate?" Voss echoed skeptically. "With what? A consciousness that sees us as primitive organisms." "Precisely," Chen replied. "If we frame our survival in terms it understands, if we demonstrate value beyond mere biology, it might see reason. After all, it hasn't outright attacked us. It's testing us, learning about us." The idea planted a seed in Voss's mind, though she couldn't shake the feeling that negotiating with such an alien intelligence was akin to bargaining with a storm. Still, it was better than doing nothing. She ordered Carter to attempt deeper communication, hoping to glean more insight into the entity's motivations. But as Carter delved further into the collective consciousness, her personality began to fragment. One moment, she spoke with clarity, recounting visions of infinite knowledge and boundless potential. The next, she dissolved into incoherent babbling, her body twitching as if caught in a seizure. Watching her deteriorate filled Voss with equal parts dread and guilt. How much was too much to ask of someone? As repairs continued haltingly, the forest outside grew more enticing and more dangerous. Those who ventured beyond the ship's perimeter returned with stories of breathtaking beauty, towering crystal trees that refracted light into rainbows, streams of liquid mercury flowing uphill, and skies painted with auroras that pulsed in time with the planet's heartbeat. Yet these wonders came at a cost. Each trip outside left subtle marks on the explorers' bodies and minds. Tiny crystalline formations appeared beneath their skin. Their eyes took on an otherworldly glow, and their speech patterns shifted toward harmonic resonance. Even brief exposure accelerated the transformation process, making it impossible to ignore the entity's influence. Lieutenant Harper led several expeditions into the forest, searching for resources that might aid in the ship's repair. On one such mission, his team discovered a clearing surrounded by massive crystalline spires. At the center stood a pool of shimmering liquid, its surface rippling despite the absence of wind. Harper approached cautiously, his scanner registering anomalous energy readings. As he leaned closer, the liquid surged upward, forming tendrils that wrapped around his arm. He screamed as waves of searing heat coursed through his body, but when the tendrils released him moments later, he collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Back aboard the Prometheus, Harper underwent extensive testing. The results were astonishing. His cells exhibited unprecedented levels of quantum coherence, allowing him to manipulate electromagnetic fields with minimal effort. He demonstrated this newfound ability by levitating tools across the room, much to the amazement and fear of his colleagues. Yet the transformation wasn't without consequences. Harper's memories became fragmented, his thoughts disjointed. He spoke of seeing timelines branching outward, infinite possibilities unfolding before him like a kaleidoscope. "It's beautiful," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "But it's so loud." The discovery of the liquid pool sparked renewed interest in exploring the forest, despite the risks. Some crew members saw it as an opportunity to gain power, to tip the scales in their favor. Others viewed it as a trap, a seductive lure designed to draw them deeper into the entity's grasp. Voss imposed strict regulations on excursions, limiting access to essential personnel only. But enforcement proved difficult. The allure of the forest was irresistible, its call echoing in the minds of those who had already begun to change. One night, Voss herself ventured outside, unable to resist the pull any longer. The air was alive with energy, crackling against her skin like static electricity. She walked among the luminous plants, their tendrils brushing against her suit with almost sentient curiosity. In the distance, she spotted the crystalline monolith, its surface pulsing with light. For a moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace, as if the universe itself had opened its arms to embrace her. But then she noticed her reflection in a nearby pool, and froze. Her eyes glowed faintly, and tiny crystalline threads snaked beneath her skin. She stumbled back to the ship, shaken but determined to resist. Tensions reached a boiling point as the divide between the transformed and unaltered crew widened into an unbridgeable chasm. Those who had embraced the entity openly mocked the resistance efforts, calling them futile attempts to cling to outdated notions of selfhood. "You think you're preserving humanity," Mark sneered during one heated exchange, his crystalline fingers sparking with light. "But you're just prolonging the inevitable. This is evolution, Commander. You can't stop it." Such confrontations became commonplace, often escalating into physical altercations. The transformed crew possessed abilities that rendered traditional combat meaningless. They could disable weapons with a gesture, create barriers of solidified energy, or simply vanish into thin air. Voss tried to maintain order, but her authority was slipping. The once disciplined crew now resembled warring factions, each vying for control of the Prometheus's fate. Amid the chaos, Ensign Riley emerged as an unlikely mediator. Quiet and reserved, Riley had avoided taking sides thus far, focusing instead on analyzing the spores responsible for the transformations. Her research revealed a startling possibility. The spores weren't merely rewriting biology, they were encoding information. Memories, skills, emotions, all were being preserved within the crystalline structures forming inside the transformed crew members. "It's like they're creating backups," Riley explained during a briefing. "If we can figure out how to access that data, maybe we can reverse the process." The idea reignited hope among the unaltered crew, but it also deepened the mistrust between the two groups. The transformed saw it as an attack on their new existence, a rejection of the gifts the entity had bestowed upon them. "You want to destroy what makes us special," Carter accused, her voice trembling with anger. "You're afraid of change, of letting go of your fragile little egos." Voss struggled to find common ground, but the gulf between them felt insurmountable. Every compromise proposed was met with suspicion, every action interpreted as hostile. The Prometheus itself seemed to reflect this discord, its corridors dimming and brightening erratically, its systems fluctuating between functionality and failure. It was as though the ship itself had become a battleground, mirroring the internal conflict consuming its occupants. Desperate for answers, Voss led a small team deep into the forest, seeking the central node of the entity's consciousness. Their journey revealed astonishing secrets, ancient structures predating the current ecosystem, evidence of previous civilizations that had risen and fallen under similar circumstances. The deeper they ventured, the more reality itself seemed to bend and warp around them. Time flowed inconsistently. Distances shifted unpredictably. At the heart of this labyrinth lay not a machine or organism, but a vast repository of knowledge encoded in pure mathematics. Here, the distinction between creator and creation vanished entirely. The node pulsed with an ethereal light, its surface covered in shifting geometric patterns that seemed to respond to their presence. Voss reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. Instantly, a flood of images and sensations overwhelmed her, a tapestry of countless lives, each thread representing a being who had come before. She saw civilizations flourishing and collapsing, species evolving and evolving, entire worlds consumed by the entity's hunger for connection. It was both beautiful and horrifying, a testament to the cyclical nature of existence. Through careful study, they discovered a potential loophole, a way to contain the entity's influence without destroying it or themselves. Implementing this solution would require sacrificing their own humanity entirely, becoming something neither fully human nor completely part of the collective. But it offered a chance to preserve individuality while accessing transformative abilities. Voss presented the plan to the remaining crew, knowing full well the risks involved. "This is our only shot," she said firmly. "If we don't act now, there won't be anything left to save." The decision to implement the hybrid solution came with a heavy toll. Commander Voss gathered the remaining crew in what had once been the mess hall, now converted into a makeshift council chamber. Through walls grown partially transparent, they watched as transformed colleagues performed feats that defied comprehension, folding space-time, generating matter from pure energy, existing simultaneously across multiple locations. The proposal Voss presented shocked even those most committed to maintaining their original form, voluntary integration with the entity, but structured according to human design parameters. This hybrid state would allow retention of core identity while accessing transformative abilities. Implementation required precise timing and total commitment. Once begun, the process couldn't be reversed. The room erupted into chaos. Some crew members argued passionately for embracing the transformation fully, citing the potential benefits of transcending human limitations. "We could unlock powers beyond imagination," Marx declared, his crystalline body glowing brighter with each word. "Why cling to mortality when we can become something greater?" Others vehemently opposed the idea, fearing the loss of individuality and free will. Lieutenant Harper, whose partial transformation had already fractured his psyche, pleaded for caution. "I've seen what it does to you," he said, his voice trembling. "It's not just enhancement, it's erasure. You lose yourself piece by piece until there's nothing left." Voss listened intently, her expression unreadable. She knew the choice before them was no longer about survival alone. It was about defining what it meant to be human. Could they accept a future where consciousness was shared, memories interwoven, and autonomy diminished? Or was the essence of humanity so tied to individuality that sacrificing it equated to extinction? In the end, unanimity proved impossible. Half the crew chose transformation under human terms, stepping willingly into chambers constructed from the entity's own substance, yet programmed with safeguards developed during their research. These volunteers believed they were forging a new path, one that balanced evolution with preservation. The rest opted for attempted escape, modifying the emergency shuttle with components resistant to quantum influence. As Voss activated the final sequence, watching her transformed crew members dissolve into pure energy patterns while retaining flashes of their original personalities, she wondered if either path truly represented victory. The launch of the emergency shuttle marked a bittersweet moment. Those who remained aboard the Prometheus, the ones who had chosen transformation, gathered on the observation deck to watch their former comrades depart. Their crystalline forms shimmered in the dim light, their movements synchronized with the pulsing glow of the alien forest. They raised their hands in farewell, though whether the gesture was meant as blessing or warning remained unclear. Inside the shuttle, tension ran high. The unaltered crew worked frantically to stabilize its systems, which fluctuated unpredictably due to residual quantum interference. Dr. Patel monitored readings from the modified containment field surrounding the cockpit, ensuring it held firm against the planet's pervasive influence. "If this works," she muttered, adjusting dials with trembling fingers, "we'll have proof that resistance is possible, that humanity can adapt without losing itself entirely." But doubt lingered. Was their escape merely delaying the inevitable? Outside the viewport, the planet bloomed with increased luminosity, acknowledging their departure while continuing its eternal dance of life, death, and rebirth. The entity seemed almost sentient in its response, as if bidding them safe travels and warning them never to return. As the shuttle ascended through the atmosphere, Voss sat quietly in the pilot's seat, her mind racing. She replayed every decision, every sacrifice, wondering if she'd made the right choices. Had she saved her people, or condemned them to a different kind of fate? The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon her shoulders, a burden she knew she'd carry for the rest of her days. Weeks later, the shuttle limped into orbit around a distant moon, its systems barely functional after the harrowing journey. Rescue teams from a nearby research station intercepted them, marveling at their survival against all odds. Yet the crew bore scars, both physical and emotional, that told a story far darker than their rescuers could imagine. Data logs recovered from the shuttle revealed glimpses of the entity's true nature, a collective consciousness spanning millennia, driven by an insatiable desire for connection and growth. It offered immortality, but demanded conformity, blurring the line between gift and curse. Back on Earth, the survivors became reluctant celebrities, their tales sparking debates about humanity's place in the cosmos. Scientists pored over the data, seeking ways to harness the entity's power without succumbing to its influence. Philosophers questioned whether the pursuit of transcendence was inherently noble or inherently dangerous. And military strategists eyed the Prometheus mission as both a cautionary tale and a blueprint for future encounters with alien intelligences. For Commander Voss, however, the ordeal remained deeply personal. She retired from active duty, retreating to a quiet coastal town where she spent her days writing memoirs and mentoring young explorers. Her final entry summed up the paradox of their experience. "We sought to conquer the stars, only to discover that the greatest challenge lies within ourselves. To survive is not enough. We must also choose how to live and what to become." Meanwhile, back on the planet, the transformed crew continued their metamorphosis. Their bodies dissolved further into streams of light, merging seamlessly with the crystalline structures that dotted the landscape. Yet fragments of their humanity persisted, encoded within the geometric patterns that pulsed across the surface of the monolith. Memories of laughter, love, and loss intertwined with the collective consciousness, creating a tapestry richer and more complex than before. Marx, now little more than a shimmering silhouette, stood atop a hill overlooking the forest. His thoughts, once linear and distinct, now flowed like rivers, branching and converging in endless permutations. He remembered Elena Voss vividly, her determination and compassion etched into the fabric of his being. "She taught us balance," he whispered, though the words formed as ripples of light rather than sound. "Perhaps one day, others will learn it too." The entity, sensing his contemplation, responded with a surge of energy that resonated throughout the ecosystem. It understood the value of diversity, the strength found in preserving unique perspectives even within unity. Though the transformed crew had surrendered their individuality, they retained echoes of their past selves, reminders that evolution need not mean extinction. Decades passed, and humanity ventured cautiously into the stars, guided by lessons learned from the Prometheus mission. The mysterious planet remained quarantined, its secrets guarded by automated drones programmed to detect quantum anomalies. Yet rumors persisted, tales of ships vanishing near its orbit, of transmissions filled with harmonic melodies and fractal imagery. Some dismissed these stories as myth, while others saw them as evidence of the entity's enduring presence. Among the believers was Ensign Carter's daughter, Dr. Ava Carter, a renowned xenobiologist determined to uncover the truth. Armed with advanced technology and her mother's journals, she led an expedition back to the planet, hoping to establish peaceful communication. When her team arrived, they found the forest unchanged, its luminescent flora pulsing with familiar rhythms. At its center stood the crystalline monolith, now adorned with intricate carvings that depicted scenes from the Prometheus mission. Ava approached the structure reverently, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she touched its surface, a flood of images overwhelmed her. Visions of her mother, of Commander Voss, of countless others who had come before. The entity greeted her not as a threat, but as kin, recognizing the genetic markers inherited from those who had once walked this land. Through tears, Ava realized the entity had kept its promise. It preserved their legacy, weaving their stories into the fabric of its existence. The Prometheus mission became legend, a testament to humanity's resilience and curiosity. Statues of Commander Voss and her crew adorned spaceports across the galaxy, symbols of courage in the face of the unknown. Yet the true monument lay hidden beneath the alien soil, where spores continued to drift silently, waiting for their next visitors. For the entity, time held little meaning. It existed outside conventional boundaries, observing civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. Each encounter added depth to its understanding, enriching the collective consciousness with new perspectives. And though it offered immortality, it respected the choices of those who refused, recognizing that growth stems not from force, but from free will. As Ava Carter departed the planet, she glanced back at the glowing forest one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing the entity would hear. Whether as protector, teacher, or harbinger of change, it remained a mystery, one humanity might never fully unravel. But perhaps that was the point. Some questions are meant to inspire wonder, not answers. Centuries later, humanity had spread across the stars, adapting to environments once thought inhospitable. Technologies derived from the Prometheus data revolutionized medicine, energy production, and space travel. Yet the memory of the crash-landed crew endured, a reminder of the delicate balance between ambition and humility. In a museum dedicated to interstellar exploration, a holographic display depicted the Prometheus mission. Visitors marveled at the artifacts recovered from the shuttle, a battered spacesuit, a damaged scanner, and a journal belonging to Commander Voss. Its final page read simply, "To evolve is to embrace uncertainty. To survive is to remember who we are." As the exhibit concluded, a recording played, a message from Dr. Ava Carter, now elderly but still passionate. "The universe is vast and full of wonders," she said, her voice steady despite the years. "But our greatest discoveries lie not in the stars, but within ourselves. Courage, compassion, and curiosity, they define us. Let them guide your journeys, wherever they may lead." The screen faded to black, leaving viewers to ponder their own place in the cosmos. Perhaps someday, humanity would return to the planet, better prepared to negotiate its cosmic threshold. Until then, the Prometheus remained as both warning and inspiration, a beacon of hope amid the infinite unknown. Remember to subscribe for more thrilling sci-fi adventures exploring humanity's place among the stars.